So we're very proud and happy to invite two interesting people in the commerce space. Kusum Kanwar is a product leader at Shopify, and they are working on some super interesting stuff for the web. And Mick McCarthy, Senior Vice President of Design at The Stable, who have a lot of experience also making those experiences. So they will have a conversation and lead us into how to make commerce human. Right, welcome to the stage.
Hello.
Hello.
How to make commerce human through content.
I guess people are wondering right now, why do we need to make commerce human, or what's not human about it, right?
I don't know. I was hoping you could tell me what's happening in your world and over at Shopify to humanize commerce, to be less transactional and more connected, create community and purpose.
Absolutely. At Shopify, we pride ourselves to become the commerce platform for entrepreneurs and to allow entrepreneurs to express their brand, to express really the identity of who they are. And I think that the cookie cutter nature of commerce is the antithesis of what we believe in. Right? We want unique brands to express their unique voice. And as part of what is important with commerce is that as human beings, we've been trading for thousands of years, and this has been the evolution of our societies all over the world. I'm from India, which has been the center of trade for many centuries, and a part of trade is what makes us human. It's what makes us understand people. It's what connects us. It's what helps us empathize with each other. And it's what's brought, diplomacy to a lot of our world. But as commerce moves towards this more structured approach through online shopping, through discovering products, and buying them, I feel like somewhere we're losing this ability to connect with the people behind the product. We're losing this ability to connect with who they are, why are they working on this product. I grew up my entire life talking to vegetable vendors in India, and I knew exactly who they were. I knew their families. I knew, why they were selling what they were selling. I felt a connection not just to what they were selling, but who they were as people. And I think that's really important for our society to sustain that connection, and that the efficiency and the work that we are doing at Shopify to make commerce more approachable to smaller brands shouldn't ever come at the cost of taking away what is important to us as people, which is the humanity and the connection between the buyer and the seller.
We just met for a few minutes ago for the first time. It sounds like you don't want to talk about content management systems. You want to get into historical, anthropological, personal connection all the way back to the old, customer and the merchant behind the vegetable counter. That's exciting, because that's what it's really about. We have this. We're all building these platforms, and we look at this industry, and we have all these amazing, technology products that are enabling this connection. This distribute ideas and story, and I don't know if we need, I think there's that, I don't know how many more products we need, more than we need stories and poets, and that meaningful transaction is that sometimes we get in this world as an industry, it's about platforms and plugins and partners, and we forget that it's really about people, and it's about brands, and it's about their purpose and their story, and how we're going to connect these two things. I was out to dinner with some colleagues over here who I just met, who I just started working with, went through this crazy merger with 500 people, and it's so nice to connect with some people and also see Suk, my old buddy there. And we're talking about, these technologies. Ultimately, we're building these interfaces, An interface by nature is a barrier. But really, it's a beautiful distribution point to create this connection, too. It can be a tool if it's used properly. So when you're looking at these interfaces and these engagements, either online, offline, or connected commerce across, retail, storefront, everything, what do you see that's going well? And what do you see that is our responsibility to provide and encourage and empower these brands and these customers to connect to each other. How are you doing it? How do you see it, and what is Shopify doing about it?
Absolutely. I think what is going well right now is that people are thinking about their brand voice more and more. So they want to differentiate. They want not only to differentiate for the purpose of acquiring customers, but even for the reasons they're starting the business themselves, right? So they're going into these small businesses and they're thinking, it's not just what I'm building, but how I'm communicating, how am I talking about it? How is it sustainable? Is it eco-friendly? Like it's the value that the brands are driving, and more they want to communicate that value through Shopify and through the content that is surrounding the merchandising. So it's not just buying a product, but it's what is this product about? I mean, you and I talked about your partner's brand, and I think we should get into that a little bit. And that people are reading information about products. They're not just glossing over it and buying. They're trying to understand the brand before they make that first purchase. But it's also the return loyalty that brand voice is bringing around. So I think that's what's really going well, is that our entrepreneurs are thinking about who they are and then the best ways to communicate them in the most effective ways without losing the efficiency that comes with a platform. So you're still getting all the benefits of a platform, the trust, payments, anything to do with merchandising, inventory, and shipping, but then you're still able to have that uniqueness. That's what's really going well. Where we would like our entrepreneurs to go is to spend more time in those design processes and workflows rather than in redundant tasks, which is where they're stuck. And I think some people talked about this yesterday as well, is that we want to empower our entrepreneurs to have remarkable experiences, but where they need to be investing their time is in thinking about those experiences. As you said, the interface doesn't have to be a barrier. We know we live in a world today where we can't just walk into only the Grand Bazaar and shop from there, but we can also walk into the Grand Bazaar, right? So you could, through virtual, storytelling,
Metaverse.
Right, or the metaverse, you could walk into, a small street somewhere at the other end of the world and discover the brand, and it's not just about buying from them, it's also learning about that experience and that seller, and that's really what we want to enable is, 1,000 bazaars through Shopify, but each of them having a unique, memorable experience and connection between the buyer and the seller.
So when you're thinking about the buyer and the seller, like what kind of experiences are you seeing out there that are, we're talking about the entrepreneur, small, SMB as well. It's funny because I look at the entrepreneur and SMB as killing it in content. I see a lot of the bigger brands and enterprise not doing so well and trying to catch up.
Yep.
What are you seeing happening?
Well, one is I'm seeing that our brands are everywhere. So the brands are meeting the customers where they are. So it's no longer this monolith, you have a website and they come to your website. I mean, that's usually the last point, right? So the first point is you're discovering them through TikTok and you're discovering them through word of mouth. And
Are you on TikTok?
I'm not, unfortunately. I hate to admit it, but I'm not. But our brands are, they are wherever their buyers are, and you're discovering them. If you're appealing to the old nostalgic people like me, you're discovering them through print media. Or if you're appealing to the young hipster millennial, you're discovering them through podcasts, or you're discovering them through social influences. So the idea being that our merchants are meeting the buyers where they are, and then also meeting them with content. Because what you're discovering in these areas about your brands isn't just the product. You're discovering who they are, what is their ethos, why is this brand important, why are they interesting, why are they exciting, why are they worth following, and why are they worth influencing other people about. And I think the biggest shift that I am seeing is that for the first time, buyers are becoming brand ambassadors. So it's not just this Instagram social media influencer who is the influencer. It's all of us. Like there's some brands that I just absolutely love, and I keep touting.
We both like Levi's.
Well, it's not just what but like I keep touting to my friends and my family members about these brands, and they're like, are they paying you? And I'm like, no, they aren't. But this is how excited and passionate people get about the brands that they love, right? And I think that's also another big big change that we're seeing is that we're not just creating people who come and buy something once. So, we are a commerce platform, but we're not purely a transactional platform. We're creating this type of brand, almost hyper loyalty, but also this brand connection where you feel a certain pride when you buy something. And we can talk a little bit more about some of those brands as well.
Yeah, we do need to talk about some of those brands because it's like, we've been, you and I had this conversation backstage. It's kind of about purpose. And so I came across this blog a while back. And I don't know, some people subscribe to it, some people don't. It's called the Transition of the 4 Ps. And it used to be that it was, product, position, price, and promotion. And if you pulled these 4 levers as a marketer, you could get a sale or somebody to buy your product. But, as we grow and change and understand the value and impact that we have on the choices that we make, especially with the Z and millennial buyer who's very purpose-driven, they're going to buy less. They're going to buy more important products. They're going to vote with their dollar. I think I'm a Z or millennial in my 50s because I think the same way. That there's this new brand pyramid coming out that starts with purpose at the bottom. And then it's the position of, kind of where it fits within you and your market. And then there's partners, all the social channels. Who's wearing it? How are they using it? Mm-hmm. Who's going live with it and teaching me how to cook with it, and stuff like that. And then the personalization of, how can I order my custom shoelaces to be yellow? And so it's this brand pyramid from purpose, position, partners, and personalization that we've been playing around with. And so I rethought my whole team about a year ago and just I poached people from Refinery 29, Sue Tran and Vera Romero, and just started thinking about content. We figured out user experience, we figured out design, we figured out platform, but we were just not connecting right with the customers. Mm-hmm. And we were launching these products that some of the brands needed help with this too, because they would say it's the smallest camera in the world instead of like that Simon Sinek start with why. There's that great analogy. Zune said a million, 500 million whatever megabytes in a device, and Apple said 1,000 songs in your pocket. 1,000 songs in your pocket. That sounds like something that's personalized for me, and it's important. It has purpose and value. Yeah. And so I'm rambling. I do this a lot, so stop me at any time. So we're talking about purpose, and tell me some of the brands that you see out there that are purpose-driven and why you think that's important, and what do we all have as consumers as a responsibility in our impact related to sustainability as we sit next to Fiji water on the table?
Yeah, I think in terms of purpose, I think most of our brands are purpose-driven, but I think the purposes are different, right? So I'm not attributing a value factor to it. Like sustainability, I think is a really important value, but a lot of our brands have very specific purposes, and our job as a platform is to allow them to speak to their purpose. And I'll give you an example of one that we've recently at Shopify, we've all been very endeared by this Italian grandmother. It's Nonna, and she makes her own olive oil and out of this little farm in Italy. And all of us have a bottle of the olive oil, and we recently, she also teaches how to make pasta and gnocchi from scratch out of her house, a little farmhouse in Italy. And we did a class, and we used Nonna's olive oil. We used her, and every time I look at that bottle, on my kitchen shelf, there's a feeling of connection. I've never met her. I've never been to Italy to where she is, but I feel a strong connection with the brand. And so now when I want to cook that type of food, I feel like this is somebody I know. I've met her. She yelled at me at how badly I was butchering the gnocchi dough. She's like, no. She did, yeah. And so it's just like there's a different feeling now, right? And it's a different level of connection versus any other olive oil I purchase, off the shelf. And I think a lot of our brands, like her granddaughter is running the store, but what makes that brand interesting is the content. It is that live cooking class. It is all of the content they have on their commerce store, as well as all of their social channels, which describes this really brave, powerful woman who's lived through all, war and all sorts of, events to now make this olive oil and teach her cooking to the world, right? And this is very uniquely personal to her, but it's now becoming a personal story for me to relate. And I think that's the beauty of how our brands are communicating now. It's just there's an evocative moment that they're creating in their buyers.
And you can have that conversation over dinner. What a great dinner conversation about when you cook something with the oil.
Yeah, absolutely. My son knows her. He
Yeah,
says, Mama,
that's
we use
great.
Nana's olive oil.
Yeah, that's an amazing
But it's
conversation.
also about creating a world. I have a 4-year-old, and when we read books, we talk about very rich trading, relationships and tapestries, right? Grocer cat buys the food from farmer dog and sells it to, whatever, the pig family. But when we're in real life, our behavior with trade and commerce is so much more transactional, right? We're buying things on our app, and we're not talking to the grocer. Nobody's helping us pick the right fruits and vegetables, and it's becoming a lot more disconnected. And so I want to create, as a product manager, I always think, what is the product that I'm creating I'm creating for not just for today, but for the world that my child will grow up in. And part of that responsibility is to not just allow our brands to be human, but for us to build products that are human-centric, like you were talking about earlier, human-centric design, that help people understand their responsibility in keeping our relationships alive and real, and not losing the rich tapestry of connection for the sake of speed and efficiency, which is really valuable and can broaden the extension as well.
It's funny you bring up the food category, because I have a 28-year-old daughter, and she didn't know cooking and recipes existed till TikTok. Like, it wasn't a thing. I grew up in the restaurant business. My wife and I are great cooks. And all of a sudden she's posting all these things. I'm like, you're learning how to cook. Like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm watching TikTok recipes. And I asked her, I said, did you know that recipes and cooking existed before TikTok? And she's like, it didn't for me, And it brings me to an olive oil company too, called Grazza. I was on this design review at work, and every week the team comes in with like new and exciting brands. It's Grazza. Competitors in Nona. They're both equally probably have amazing stories. And we looked at this brand, we fell in love with it, and all of us went online on a Zoom call at that moment and bought Grazza olive oil. And it comes in a 2-part series. It's called Sizzle and Drizzle. So when you're cooking, you sizzle, and then when you put it on your salad, you drizzle. And that is like a hook that everybody posts. I even got reposted by Grazza. I'm a food influencer now, because I sizzled and drizzled. It's like, what a great connection that was. But it leads into, we just got off about a 2-month stint of recipe strategy for chicken of the sea, and now we're do the same for Cabot cheese, because recipes and cooking is so engaging and so interactive that you could learn a lot from looking at what people are doing cooking. We're doing this exciting, I'm not doing it, the team is doing it, I barely know anything about it other than they're doing it, is a live cooking engagement with Pillsbury through General Mills. We're working with General Mills at the stable, and the great retail brand, bringing a lot of them online. And we got the opportunity to do a live shopping and live demo event with Pillsbury, which is going to go live in a couple weeks. It's exciting. But there's another one called Equal Parts. They're on Shopify. Anybody heard of Pattern Brands or Equal Parts? Pattern Brands was with Jin Lane as a branding agency, and they said, we want to be a product company. And they launched a pan, like a cookware pan. I thought, Jin Lane, I always liked him as a branding company. I'm going to buy the pot, the pan. I bought it. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I'm going to put myself as a post-grad like my daughter. And I had a relationship with my pan through an SMS messaging system. And they shipped it out, and they told me all about the pan, how to take care of the pan. They sent me tips on how to clean it, and how to season it. And then they would ask me, what's in your kitchen, and I would send them like the ingredients. They would send me back a recipe for it. There were influencers that would go live, and they would text me, so-and-so's going live. It was like amazing. Like I had a human relationship with a pan. Right. And so you see these things that people are doing on and off the platforms that we're building in very unique and interesting ways. And it makes you it makes you excited to be aligned with that brand in some way and have that purpose.
And I think that brings us to, what we're talking about is that content really does make commerce human, right? So it is the storytelling, it's the remarkable experiences, it's creating those memorable experiences that all come through content. And I think one of the bigger shifts, and you're all here, so you know structured content, but one of the biggest shifts that have come towards content has been this idea of structured content, which it might seem from the outset that it is making content less human and less connectable because it's structured and it's in blocks and it can be reused, but it's actually the opposite. It takes all of the effort away from focusing on the tedious workflows around content and focusing more on the design, the brand, the look and feel, and also the consistency of your brand. So what's beautiful about structured content is it actually allows your brand to be consistent in all of those channels because you're not needing to build them 15 different times. You're not needing to manage the content, the actual editorials themselves in all of those channels, but instead you're able to focus a lot more on who is the buyer in those channels, how what colors and design patterns are appealing and interesting. And that's really where we as Shopify, as a platform, are focusing our efforts on, in partnership with Sanity, is really trying to bring more structured content into the platform and building this almost this education around why it's important. I think one of the speakers yesterday was talking about like the move to structured content will happen when people start to feel the pain. And even smaller brands are feeling the pain. And they're feeling the pain because they really care about their brand and their consistency. And so because they're having to do all these repetitive workflows, they're starting to realize this is actually, there has to be a better way, right? And we're just so excited with the fact that we can work with Sanity and then improve our platform ourselves so that our merchants don't have to feel this kind of repetitive pain of the workflow, and they can do what they do best, which is the entrepreneurship and the storytelling.
Yeah, it's been an ongoing battle. I've been doing this for 25 years, so I've seen kind of every content management system. I mean, at times there was no content management systems. And,
what have you seen in a change over time that has been, for the better, but also where have you seen the trends that are taking us away from impactful design, and what are you at Stable doing?
That's a good question. There's so many genres, there's so many flavors of commerce, there's so many flavors of e-commerce. Depends on which road you want to go down. There's you can be very transactional, you can be Amazon, or you can be a great storytelling company like Vacation Sunscreen. I don't know if you've ever seen a Vacation Sunscreen site. It's awesome, it's so fun, or Cause Probiotics or some of these other ones. Or we did a site called Ride 100, and there's just content creators and storytellers, or you go to a Patagonia site. So it's like there's many flavors of who you want to be. So what I see changing is, when I came into this world, I came in as a designer and started designing, and there was no engineers or coders, so I had to figure out how to code and started building websites, and here I am 25 years later. But the odd thing I'm saying, I was talking to Dan Hill over here. He was saying that we're going back to experiences again. 5 years ago it was like we got to copy Amazon. We got to go fast. It's got to be transactional, and we got to related products, and we got to build AOV, and we got to build LTV, and we got to get them through the door quickly. And it's not the case. I have a wife. I have my partners. I have a wife, my partner. She has a small skincare company. You look at the data. Her PDP. She has 2 minutes on a PDP and a 3.6 conversion rate. That's crazy. I'm like, what are they doing there? You know what they're doing? They're reading the ingredients. They care about the product.
Yeah, they do.
And I initially told her, strip all this out. You don't need it. It's too much content. 3 years ago. And then I looked at it, I'm like, this is amazing. You have a 2-minute on site on a single page looking at this content and a 3.6 conversion rate. People want the information because they care about the product. They want to connect with it, and they want to buy the right thing at the right time. So that's new because it was very transactional. It was very move, and now we're starting to create these beautiful, elegant experiences. And I'm going to say the word. Suk said, "Mick, you're going to be so excited." Nobody said the word PWA in like a whole day, but I'll say it because we have these technology platforms of content at scale and speed to the device that we're not taking advantage of as designers and content creators too. Is that I'll level set with my frustrations about design, is that we have a Ferrari, and it's like being driven like a Corolla. No offense to anybody driving a Corolla, they're awesome cars, 200,000 miles. But we have this fast framework of view and react frameworks in the front to distribute and launch this content very quickly through robust video and photography and copy and interactions, and you're still getting the same old PDP you got 3 years ago. So I'm seeing a lot of growth that we're creating experiences, but we haven't gotten to where we need to be, I think. And so that's an exciting future. I think that things like Standardity and faster frameworks and technology will bring, because it's about the technology to distribute the content faster so we can have a better experience.
Yeah, and I think that's also where we as a company, Shopify, are investing a lot, is in those faster frameworks, and as well as the being able to take content and presentation apart so that you can take advantage of those faster frameworks, and that we understand that what makes content or commerce human through content is the experience of the content, right? And and speed is a factor to that. Like, you can turn up the most beautiful site, but if it doesn't load and if it's not really performant, then it's a terrible experience, right? And that's your first interaction with the brand. And that's why we're investing very heavily in front-end frameworks. We're launching a new product, Hydrogen. We already have our online store product. But the areas that we're focusing on is allowing the merchant that level of flexibility that they need. If they're a larger merchant and they're working with an agency such as yourself and designing that very bespoke experience, or if they're a smaller merchant and they need the click, point and click, drag and drop of the editor, we're meeting them where they are to be able to have that right brand experience, but focusing on the fundamentals, which is the framework itself and the design, and then working with Sanity to bring the partnership of structured content so that they're able to think like a bigger brand, right? And I think that's one of the, for me, working at Shopify, I think one of the things that I feel really proud about is that you could be Nonna selling olive oil, or you could be like I discovered this amazing brand and they make tortillas, and it's like, you could have a very, very supposedly small product, but you can be a really big, impactful voice in the world. And it's that democratizing of commerce and the platform that we provide to our merchants that is so powerful. And then giving all merchants that same ability to speak, I think is really impactful. And that's really where, based on what you're saying, we are trying to invest our time in as a platform, is allowing merchants to be able to build their own voice, but in a way that is long term. It's not just like I'm just here for a few sales. I'm thinking about my brand as like Shopify is a 100-year company, and the brand is a 100-year brand.
Yeah, I was thinking I have a unique opportunity at the stable of running what's called the brand and content team, and it's a studio of about 25 brand strategists, art directors, creative directors, videographers, photographers, designers, and we get an opportunity to work on like new and emerging brands, like 0 to 1 things. And we're working with this exciting brand right now called Umaro. If maybe some of you saw them on Shark Tank, Beth and Royal and the team, they're bringing they have an intellectual property of how to get the best way to get protein out of seaweed, and they're coming to market with a seaweed bacon. And like, if you can make a seaweed bacon that people are going to buy, it's like bacon's a gateway drug. It's a gateway drug for a vegetarian to eat meat again, or what?
I'm a vegetarian. I would.
I'm close.
I would try the
I'm close
seaweed
to it.
bacon.
It's really good. Or it's a gateway drug to get meat lovers to be vegetarian or something. But there was this funny piece of content that we wanted to create. It was really funny. Beth, one of the founders, was talking about they had their production in Nashville, and they were driving down the road and they were speeding, and somebody pulled them over, and the policeman said, "What are you doing here in Nashville?" And they said, "We're making seaweed bacon." And he said, "Don't you know this is pork country?" I was like, that's just like one of those things that's just so funny. It's like, we're working with this emerging brand. It's going to be a 100-year brand. It's going to be, if you're following like Beyond Meat or Impossible or some of these, they're going to potentially revolutionize the way we think about protein from seaweed, which is the fastest growing plant on the planet and totally sustainable and renewable. And the content we're going to be able to create around that is going to be so much fun. And the story and the passion that these founders have is going to be so resonant within the industry, within the community, and within culture. It's just an exciting opportunity to be here. And it's going to sit on Shopify.
That's great. No, that's exactly the type of brand that we're excited about, right? The brand that actually has this deeper purpose. But even the brands that don't have the same type of value or purpose-driven commerce are still really interesting, exciting brands. And what we want to make sure is that they're able to identify and express their voice, like express what is unique about yourself, discover what's unique about yourself, and then be able to express it.
I guess you have to define purpose. They all have a purpose. Each one serves a different purpose. But then we have the purpose with the quotes. It's a purpose sustainable driven brand.
Right, absolutely. So I wanted to, ask you a little more about how do these brands start to think about content with Stable, and then how do you help them get from the idea to the implementation phase, and in terms of delivery and execution, but also in understanding how their customers are approaching them, because this idea of uniqueness and differentiation is important, but then you're also trying to meet customers where they are. So there's a little bit of a tension there. Talk to me a little bit about how
the content has to be intentional. It has to serve a purpose. You can have a room full of creative directors and editors and stuff who all have assumptions and ideas, but we actually do a lot of user research and brand strategy around it. We're big in qualified research, so we'll go out and we'll do moderated interviews for 5 to 7 people, and maybe the company wants to reach a new demographic, so go through persona development and truly understand them, become a very empathetic researcher, and go out and talk to these people and learn the new knowledge. That's what research does, is research gives you new information. You have assumptions and you have will, which we're all really good at as designers and creatives. And then you have what people really want. And so we base a lot of our creative on what people really want. We actually go out and talk to them. We did a recent test. I don't know how the test went, but it's great that you can test content. So we went out and did some user research, and we came back, and it was for Love Pop cards. Great company. Buy their cards. Send your grandma a card today. And what we found out was that it really needed 360 views. Mm-hmm. And there was a form factor related to, as the card pulled out, where you actually put the message into the card. And so we just found these usability issues of the actual content that needed to be fixed. So we went out and shot the 360 views. We figured out how to, during the sign-up flow, to create the right views to educate the user of the form factor of the card. Mm-hmm. So it's very intentional creative. It was very intentional content to help them connect with how this product actually works. And then we were able to test that content. So instead of, we can't go out and reshoot all of Love Pop cards. The SKU count's way too big. So you want to test it. So we went out and shot enough for one category. So we could test the new content and the new look and feel against the existing look and feel. And then get some, qualified and quantified numbers and people metrics back to see if we want to invest in actually doing the rest of this work. And so you have to be intentional with it, I think, is how we approach it. And then we want to test it again. Mm-hmm. And not creative for creative's sake.
One of the things that we struggle with, as a platform is standardization, because we would love to bring more standards, more semantic meaning to our products. At the same time, we realize that our merchants or entrepreneurs are inherently very unique merchants, and their buyers are unique, and how they engage with one merchant may not be the way they engage with another merchant, an entrepreneur. In the design world, how do you balance that tension of creating more structured as well as more standardized templates for your merchants, but also then allowing them to express their unique brand? How do you balance that?
It's been the ongoing struggle. You can solve 60% of design patterns within the e-commerce space at a base level on a global design system. Mm-hmm. If you have that global design system connected with a data model, with a content management system and some sort of front end and back end on it, you can scale. You could stand up sites very quickly. And then it's really, we call them excitement generators in the UX world. It's like, what are those features and functions that are based, made potentially on new knowledge, that are going to add more value and impact to the customer's experience, and invest in those, and invest in the content. Like if a company came to me, there's many companies who come to me and say, and sorry, Shopify, we want to re-platform. Or maybe they're on Shopify, and I'm like, you don't have a platform problem. You're launching content slowly, but you just have a downright storytelling message and content problem. And if you went out and did these 3 different, photo shoots, and you wrote this different story and connected in a different way, especially on the acquisition channels, you're probably going to get more engagement and a better conversion flow, which will ultimately fund that re-platform in the future. Where am I going with this? What did you ask me?
Well, I think you're touching on what I was trying to get to, is like the idea of being able to standardize the structure of the content, but not the content itself.
Yeah, so that's it. And so then you have to standardize the structure, and then invest your time in those special user flows. Maybe you have a subscription build-a-box, or you have some personalization quiz or something that you want to do, and you want to do it right. You want to do it special, and you just don't want to install a plugin. Or maybe you're at that point, we get a lot of the points where, hey, we installed this plugin, we did some quiz, we got some first-party data, we really level it up. And then we go through the user testing, and people say, well, I'm really not learning anything about this product as I'm going through this quiz. And so then, 2.0, when we rethink it, we can go out and reshoot the content, we can write the stories related to it, and then we can implement that into the flow. And that's where the investment should probably be made. Hero banners and PDPs and 4-up column grids, and we got those down. And if you're paying for that, you're paying, you should be paying for the content that goes in that more.
Yeah, and I fully aligned with that, and that's really where, for Shopify, it's really important that we give our merchants, we call it like unfair advantage of being on our platform. The unfair advantage is the understanding of the buyer, and the understanding of the merchant, across merchants, and understanding of the product, and giving them guidelines on how best to structure their platform, but also how best to invest in some of the creative and design tools, and that's really where the focus of their brand should be, where we take care of the rest. We take care of all of the the merchandising, as well as the presentation and the framework of all of your storefront, so that you as an entrepreneur can really focus on the design aspects of your brand as well.
It was funny you asked, like I've been doing this for a long time. So, there used to not be Shopify, there used to not be Magento and these things. And we'd build it ground up, and there might be a payment gateway, and you'd somehow build a database to store the inventory and stuff. And I successfully avoided commerce for about 15 years of my life because of that, until Shopify, actually. Yeah. And we built this company, Juice Served Here, on there. And I don't know if any of you know, Juice Served Here is an incredible storytelling visual brand in LA. And I come from digital product, and I come from brand, I come from creative, and I did traditional advertising for a long time. And we built this site on Shopify for this cross-category build-a-box between dry goods, cleanses, juices, and things like this. And then we did some non-compliant PI hack for bold commerce. I don't think Recharge existed. And we launched this amazing brand on Shopify, and we had a blast. I'm like, oh my God, this is the convergence of brand and UX coming together. And our phone started ringing, and it just started going down. But it really was tools like Shopify or Sanity or some of these other ones that are coming to market that are empowering these brands to do this. So it's exciting. And in that, along the ways, now that's why I love this conversation today, content did get lost there for a while. And the human connection and the personalization related to, that old thing that you started off with, the anthropological history thing, is there is a customer, and there is a merchant, and there's a product. Yeah. And how do we connect those two things? And we have so many exciting tools across so many channels to do that now. It's wide open.
Absolutely. I'm not sure if we're at time. Or
No, I could talk forever.
I wanted to call out, though, that we, one of the things that during the pandemic, I think we all just missed having the human connection And that's also when a whole bunch of new breed of Shopify merchants emerged. And I think that was some of our human connection. Now that we're back in real life, I think it's really great to continue and deepen that human connection, but not just through these online experiences. And that's what is so great about commerce, is it can blend very easily between the online experience and then back into retail. And that's really where we are hoping that as a platform, we are there to help the brand and the merchant complete their.
Are you saying to go buy from your local merchant? You're saying to walk into a retail store and buy something?
Walk into a retail store and buy something, but also that same merchant might be online, and then someone across the world can discover them. And that's really
And you
the
can
power
help
of the
them
platform.
and you can help them get them discovered because you're an olive oil influencer now.
Yeah,
How much
absolutely.
time do we have? It was funny, we were talking backstage. I was watching TV the other day, and I installed this app called Whatnot. Anybody heard of Whatnot? Don't feel shy to raise your hands. Install it. So basically, I like collecting records. I have a vinyl problem, and there are vinyl collectors on there who are selling. Do you know this app? You like record collecting? It's like, no. He's talking about the Marvin Gaye. He's talking about Marvin Gaye's special hit, greatest hits. He's reading the liner notes and who played on the stuff. And this guy's like entertaining. He's half DJ, half record collector, half curator, and he's going to sell you the record. It's incredible. Like, I turned off the TV and I just started. I went in and started watching vinyl collectors selling records, guitars, vintage furniture, vintage clothing. It was insane. Like the way we can connect on
it's
that.
great because the content is the product in some of that.
The people
those
are the
interactions,
product,
yeah.
too.
The people
The
are
people
the
are the
product.
content.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's been so many experiences where we bought things not because we needed that particular thing,
Yeah.
but we enjoyed that experience. I have so many such memorable experiences from like travels and otherwise. But then the thing that you remember about the product is also that experience, and it becomes a memory. Not every transaction, every commerce purchase that you make will be that memory. But the idea being that, can we make it more impactful? Can we make every transaction and every interaction with a brand a more remarkable, memorable experience, I think is where we would like to.
I bought a few records I didn't need because of it. I did. Yeah, I remember, and you can hit this track listing. It'll tell you everything that they're going to sell. And then you can bring it up and you can say, I want to talk about this record. And they'll say, hey, Mick, Golden Earrings up next for you. And then we talk about Golden Earrings record. Released in 1984. Great record.
Great. I think we're at time.
Yeah.
And thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm very excited to be here with Sanity, and I think this is a great start to a great partnership.
And it's great. Make a new friend. Thank you.
Absolutely. Nice meeting you.